Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are predicting UFC Vegas 118. Let's get into it. But I will say, this is a very stacked card. What I would rate it is about a 8 out of 10. The main event, we got Belal Muhammad, Gabriel Bonfim, solid main event. Co-main event, Brandon Allen, Edmen Shahbazyan. I really have no idea why Brandon Allen is fighting outside of the rankings. Then we got Farzia Tom Nolan, which should be a fun one. We got Bryce Mitchell, Santiago Luna, also should be a very fun fight. Schnell, Alessandro, Costa, we'll get more into further that. The rest of the card is very stacked from top to bottom. And we're gonna predict all of these fights. There's 12 fights in total. But hey, without any further ado, let's get into the video. Hey, before I get any further, actually, make sure you guys hit that like, subscribe button, share my videos with your family and friends. I'm trying to at least hit over 130 subscribers for the end of the summer. We hit 100 subscribers a few days ago. Appreciate all you guys for that. Without any further ado, if you guys enjoy my content, you guys are entertained with my content, like, subscribe. Let's get into the video. All right, up first here, we have up is Kelton Suara versus Ariane Carnelossi. Now listen, stylistically, this fight it could be very obvious. You got Andre. You got Ariane who beat Najlong before, and then after that beat Alesta Nunez. Lost to Lumpy Godinez, who obviously Lumpy Godinez is a top fighter, even with her losing to Tatiana Suarez. Before that beat Pereira Rodriguez in a disqualification, and where I thought she was losing half the fight. We stalled the win, and before that lost to Elcar, and I actually think that's a terrible loss. In general, Elcar is not really that good of a fighter. We saw her, beat Julia Parashri in a fight where she didn't even win. But then you got Suarez on the other hand, who beat Manic Man, obviously then beat Yasmin, who was a good win. Lost to Angela Hill. We just saw Angela Hill beat Geelong back at last week. So no big deal of losing to her. Losing to Pereira Rodriguez. Pereira Rodriguez is a very good win. Beating Brito Brazil. Now listen, that's a solid win. But the problem I have here with Suarez, to Suarez, she's a very good boxer. She has heavy hands for the strawweight division, one of the hardest hitters. But the problem I have here is that, her last fight with Brazil, she looked pretty good. But then at the same time, she kind of looked a little, horrible. She kept trying to land takedowns consistently throughout the fight, which I get it. But she was, the takedowns were so predictable that she had a very hard time of bringing Brazil to the ground. She got Brazil to the ground in like that late third round, but also mind you, that one time where she finally got Suarez, she got Brazil to the ground. She was kind of, I don't know what she was doing. She got her to the ground, and once Brazil started kicking her legs up in the air, she just moved backwards and let her got back up, which was, in my opinion, I thought was very concerning. And then, there were loads of times in the fight where she could have took advantage of, but she didn't. That's the problem I have here. And Suarez, she's a heavy pressured boxer, but sometimes when she doesn't do that, she just looks like a freaking noob, like an amateur in there. And that's the one thing I had. Like I said, that is very concerning about Suarez. But then you got Ariane, who's just a terrible fighter on the feet. She's a good striker, but how do you get outclassed on the feet by Elcar? Elcar legit, I would like to say fought Parashri, but she looked horrible in that fight too. And her biggest win was against Pereira Rodriguez, which was a disqualification, where even then I thought she was losing the fight. But now, 3 things these fighters need to do to win. And yeah, we're going to be starting doing 3 things. Starting off with Suarez. She needs to utilize her reach and her height advantage. She's the taller fighter here. You guys, as you can tell, you guys can see that. She's the taller fighter by 3 inches. So what she needs to do in this fight is she needs to pop that jab, move out the way, put the beats on her on the inside. Because Andres is possibly going to try and keep this fight on the inside, but Suarez can't let her do that. Do that. Then next up, she needs to lean with elite boxing power. She has some good boxing power for the UFC, and she needs to lean on that, start using that. She needs to have that as her main focus. Sometimes in her last 4 fights before sorry Brazil, she was using that. But then you sometimes see it in there like once a full moon, you see her kind of not using her boxing as well, and that's just a thing I've had that we that it's been a very high problem for Swarza. And lastly, she needs to maintain top tier takedown defense. Andrea is possibly the better fighter on the ground, so she needs to be aware of what she's doing in this fight. Try and keep it on the ground, keep it on the feet. Now for Andrea, she needs to implement heavy forward pressure. Because when she uses that forward pressure, she finds a way to land those takedowns that she wants and try and submit you. And she does the most work on the ground. Listen, you see in her fight with Long, use that ground and pound. Submitting Nunez. Then also, I get beating Pereira Rodriguez. She just terrible on the feet in general. Now, next up, she needs, like I said, needs for number two. She needs to force the fight to the ground. Only, in my opinion, has an advantage. Even then, Suarez is good on the ground too. It's not like she's a horrible fighter. It's just when it comes to her landing takedowns, she could be kind of predictable for that type of stuff. Now, lastly, she needs to force the obviously. Oh, she needs to target the body in exchange when they're going and exploding at each other. She needs to land those body shots because those help her better so she can get on the ground. Because a way for you to get the fighters on the ground so they won't use the defense is by hitting their body, because they need their body, they need their legs, to defend those takedowns, defend those to even try and land takedowns. But when they can't do that and their body's injured and their body's hurt, that makes it very difficult for them to to land to defend the takedowns. Obviously, they'll still do it. They'll still land it, but it'll be much more difficult than what it is when their body's not hurt. But now, who do I got winning this fight? Listen, I'm going for Swarza to knock out on Ariane in the first round. I feel like this is very obvious. Ariane has a terrible ground game in general. Even we saw that with Lumpy Gudinez. And Lumpy Gudinez obviously is a good striker as well. But so is Swarza. And I think Swarza packs the better punch. And, I think she's going to defend those takedowns. I don't see Andrea winning this fight whatsoever. Give me Swarza by knockout. But like I said, if Andrea can get her out of there very early in the fight, then yeah, that's the only way I really see her winning this fight. But even then, Swarza is very explosive. Well, I wouldn't say the last fight, but her last 4 fights before that, very explosive in that first round. I see Swarza knocking her out in the first round. But like I said, give me Swarza by knockout. Next up is Jalissa Chaves versus Yuneisy Duben. Now, listen, I think this is going to be a very entertaining fight. But the problem here I have with Duben is that we look at her last 5 fights, her beating Regina Casana, beating Andrea Vacquez, beating Ingrid Garcia, beating Shocking Clark on the Contender Series with a very clean overhand. Had her fight against Carly Judice, which I'm gonna be honest with you, that's a very That's a obviously, I figured she was going to lose this fight because Carly Judice is just a beast. She's been on a very impressive run. But the problem I have here is that she doesn't move her head. She doesn't have footwork. She keeps her chin up majority of the times. That's where, I've been having it's been a very high problem for Dubin. Now for Chavez, she's been on a very impressive run outside of the UFC. UFC looking very impressive. She's a very explosive fighter too. I would say obviously Dubin has the more knockout rate, but Chavez the more smarter fighter. Listen, listen. Stylistically, this could be a bad matchup for Dubin because Dubin like I said, does not move her head. Just throws consistently. I wouldn't say she gets tired because she really hasn't gone a whole like 3 rounds throughout her career, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I'm very concerned. I feel like it could be very concerning for Duben. But 3 things each fighter needs to do. So I don't know, but Chaves. At first, number 3. She needs to weaponize her height and reach advantage. Because she is the taller fighter. And when she is the taller fighter, she does the best work. On the inside, she's good too because she moves. She's explosive with her striking. But but if she keeps this fight on the outside, Duben is going to struggle no matter what because Duben cannot handle being on the inside. We've even seen that for her previous fights outside of the UFC before she knocked him out. That's just, a very big problem for Duben. Now, at number 2, she needs to drag the fight into the later rounds. Once it hits the later rounds, Duben's going to start getting tired. She's going to gas out. She's going to start missing a lot of her shot, even more of her shots than what she wants to. But and then lastly, at number 3, she needs to force the clinches against the fence. She has the better clinches, and once you get Duben against that fence, we even seen that in her fight with Charlie Judice against Carl Judas. She kind of gets in this moment where she's like, oh shoot, what do I do next? Now for Duben, number 3, she needs to blitz with overhand rights early. She has such good overhand rights. We saw that in her contender series fight against Shannon Clark. But she can't just, she can't just, throw overhands like this. Just consistent. She has to set it up with a jab, come with an overhand. Or another way she could do it, she can start off by using a leg kick and then go for the overhand. Because, you attack their legs. So, a majority of the time, when you hit someone with a leg kick, they're most likely going to, focus on their leg and not try to get hit with their leg. And sometimes, they drop their guard mid-fight. And then you could come here very quickly with an overhand. Because I feel like one shot from either fighter could change the whole thing. And these are not even heavyweights. Now, at number 2, she needs to improve head movement and defense. If I was in her corner, and not her corner, if I was her trainer, and I was helping her train for this fight, head movement and footwork is what we're going to be doing. Because you're not about to come into a fight with no head movement and get absolutely knocked out. And listen, with only 8 fights in MMA, and her being only 29 years old, she's already taken about a lot of punches to the head. Even though obviously you're going to get hit, but there's no reason why you should be taking that many punches. And you're not even at double digits professional fights. Even though either way, you shouldn't be getting hit that much. But especially at the stage of your career where you're at right now, like there's no way why you should be freaking getting hurt and getting hit like that. Now, lastly, at number 1, counter strike the aggressor. Chaves is more aggressive. Try and counter strike. Duben needs to counter strike. I feel like that's her only advantage she has of winning here. Now, who do I got winning this fight? I'm going for Chaves to knock out Duben in the first round as well. Listen, the first round with Duben, if you guys know who these fighters are, you guys may think, why would they knock him out? How can she knock her out in the first round? It's because Duben doesn't have good fight IQ, doesn't have head movement, doesn't have footwork. She's easily chinned. Saw that in a fight with Carly Judice. I think she just gets knocked out here. I feel like I said, set up the ways for her to win this fight is set up those overhand rights with a jab, leg kick, either one of the two. Come out, land those overhands, keep setting it up, but don't use the same tactic every time. Sometimes you even feint a shot. Try to feint a shot to the body, come up with an overhand. Because when you feint a shot to the body, majority of the time when you land a body shot, they're trying to protect their body. So either one of the hands drop, and then they come out, and you can come out with an overhand. But give me Chaves to win this fight by knockout. But like I said, can set up those overhand rights, she has a high possibility to win this fight. But give me Chaves by knockout. Next up is Jordan Leavitt versus Joanderson Brito. I like this fight a lot, guys. You got two very good fighters. You got Jordan Leavitt and Joanderson Brito. Now you got Joanderson Brito, who's a very good kickboxer with some very good grappling. You got Jordan Leavitt, who's a very awkward and very clean boxer with some good grappling. His boxing is very good. As for some of you guys think, I think he's called the Monkey King, is because he kind of fights like a monkey, kind of. He has this very awkward type style that that I feel like it's kind of like this awkward monkey style that I guess you could call it. But looking at their last 5 fights, you got Joanderson Brito, who beat Jonathan Pierce, beat Jack Shore, and oh my god, that fight with Jack Shore was insane, man. That was probably the best I've ever seen Berto. Then went in to lose to William Gomez, which I kind of thought he won this fight. Lost to Pat Shabanti, which Pat Shabanti most recently just beat William Gomez. I called, and I called it that Pat Shabanti was going to beat William Gomez, beat Isaac Thompson, which that was on short notice for Isaac Thompson. But even then, Berto looked pretty good in that fight. But then you look at his fight, we look at Jordan Leavitt's last 5 fights, losing to Paddy Pimblett, which, figured that was going to happen. Beating Victor Martinez, which, solid win. We just saw Victor Martinez lose to Ragzu at Road to the UFC. Then, we saw him lose to Chase Hooper, which I'm going to be honest, I feel like this was a fight where he should have won, because Chase Hooper, especially as right now, he's losing to, Alexander Hernandez, most recently losing to Lance Gibson Jr., which I also called that fight too, for Lance Gibson Jr. to win. But then, you got him beating Kirk Halibo, making his debut at 145 and beating Yander Del Val, which I called this fight too, guys. I called that he was going to win this fight too. And, he looked very good in that fight. Like, the boxing was looking sharper. The grappling was looking better. His speed was looking better. Because I've always thought he was a pretty small guy for 155. But then when he moved down to 145, he looked insane on his debut. And listen, I feel like it's, it seems like it's 50-50 fight on paper. But then some people, say, oh, Joanderson Brito is going to absolutely demolish Jordan Leavitt. This is a 50-50 fight, guys. Let's go either way, because Leavitt, like I said, looked very good. And most people didn't even think he was going to do that good. But now, let's go over 3 things each fighter needs to do to win this fight. Starting off with Leavitt. He needs to weather the explosive first-round storm. I feel like that's where we see the best Berto. Berto is very clean, very accurate in that first round. He doesn't kind of get tired, but that first round is the best round we see because, he's still explosive. Berto, he can sometimes look like a prospect. Like, we saw that in his fight with Jack Shore. But then, sometimes we see him kind of flop. He lost to Pat Shabanti, which I don't call Pat Shabanti a boring fighter. I know a lot of you guys do because all you guys is really wrestling. But, like, it's styles. You're not always going to see everybody have the same style and always be fun. Like, you're going to see fighters that you may call so-called boring. But listen, the fighters that you so-called boring are looking impressive and just dominating. What's more impressive? A close decision? What's more impressive? Berto winning, William Gomez having a split decision in a very close fight where I thought Berto won, or Pat Shabanti dominating Berto? Which one would you rather have? But anywho, back to the fight now. At number 2, Leavitt needs to intake clinches and slow the pace. Leavitt does not want a high-paced Berto, because Joanderson Brito, when he's very fast and very high-paced, it's kind of a struggle for you to actually beat him. That's why I was kind of surprised that William Gomez managed to beat him. But now, lastly, at number 3, he needs to chain takedowns into submission scrambles. Try and submit Leavitt. I feel like that could be one of the only ways that Leavitt has a winning. But but either way, he still has a high chance of winning with the boxing as well. Now for Berto. Berto needs to enforce aggression on Polinick forward pressure. When he's moving forward at you, it's very tough for you to beat that because he's one of the most explosive fighters. And I don't know if you guys really remember this, but his contender series win was against Diego Lopez, and Diego Lopez is the rank number 2 in the world at featherweight. And I guess he lost to Volkanovski, but that's the world champion, man. And I feel like that was kind of obvious that he was gonna lose to Volkanovski again. Now at number oh wait, at number 2, he needs to punish Leavitt's naked takedown entries, because Jordan Leavitt's gonna try and land a rear naked choke on him, because that's probably the best. That's probably his best submission. You see, he's seen him have an anaconda choke, but he's mainly going to try and land a rear naked choke on him. So when you see that, you get back up, punish him on the feet. Now, lastly, at number 1, he needs to maintain defensive grappling discipline on Jordan Leavitt. Because if he doesn't have the grappling discipline in the fight, he's going to get ragdolled like he did in his fight with Pat Shavanti. But it probably won't be worse, because I feel like Pat Shavanti is the better grappler. It would still be bad. But now, who do I got winning this fight? I got Joanderson Brito winning this fight by a close decision. I think he's going to, win by points with the striking. On the feet, he's on the ground. He still could be very dangerous. It's going to be a split decision. You got a very good kickboxer versus a very good boxer. I think it's going to be a good fight, but give me Joanderson Brito by split decision. Next up is Chandler versus Priscila Gorshera. Now listen, this right here is a 50-50 fight. And the only reason why I say this is both fighters, are in this stage of their career where they're both on a high losing streak and just consistently losing. You got Priscila, who lost to Miranda Maverick at 125, I think, and Miranda Maverick's one of the top fighters at 125. Losing to Jasmine Genovese, we just saw her dominate Kyron Silva back at UFC Winnipeg, and also top flyweight. Beating Janas Nunez, solid win. Losing to Jocelyn Edwards, and listen, Jocelyn Edwards top at 135. Losing to Sagarla, which I thought she won this fight actually. This is a close fight, and I actually thought that I thought Priscilla won this fight. Now for Charissa Chandler. Charissa Chandler, she beat Jordal with a ground and pound. Lost to Norman Dumont, still a top fighter, even though most recently just lost to Jocelyn Edwards. I thought she won that fight. Beating Jocelyn Nunez, losing to Yannis Santos, who's a top fighter as well. Losing to Jocelyn Edwards, top fighter as well. So from what the looks of it, majority of it, both of these fighters are just losing to the best in the division. And if I'm not mistaken, Cachoeira does train with Amanda Nunes. But yeah, both fighters really cannot be trusted into this fight. So, I've been going a little bit of back and forth who I really pick for this fight. But at first I wanted to go with Charissa Chandler, then I wanted to go with Priscilla, then I wanted to go back to Charissa Chandler. So I've just been going back and forth consistently on who I really pick for this fight. But here's the thing. On the feet, I think Chandler just sucks on the feet. And that's why she mainly loses all majority of her fights. It's because she's consistently having, her striking defense in general is really not that good. But I think Priscilla's the better striker, better on the ground, because Charissa Chandler's main thing is her wrestling. I feel like it's really all she has. But now, 3 things each fighter needs to do to win. For Chandler, she needs to drag this fight into the canvas early. Like I said, the main way she really has a winning here in this fight. Her striking defense is very loose. Her striking is horrible in general. Now, at number 2, she needs to utilize her natural length and reach. She is the taller fighter. That's the problem. She doesn't know how to use her reach at all. But I just feel like that's one of the 3 things that she needs to do. Now, lastly, at number 1, is explode openings for submissions. In my opinion, I feel like her only real way of winning this fight against Priscila is trying to submit her. If she can't submit her, then that's a bad look on Chalissa, and I think she loses the fight in general. Now for Priscila, she needs to expose Chandler's poor striking defense because, like I said, Chandler's striking defense is absolutely horrible. Listen, even a 5-year-old can have better defense than her. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, that's number. She needs to stop the takedown attempts from Chandler. Chandler's going to be trying to land a lot of takedowns. She needs to stuff them in. I feel like that's a good thing she has Amanda Nunes because Amanda Nunes had very good takedown defense. Even though Priscilla's not really as good, but if I were Priscila, I would stuff the takedowns. Lastly, she needs to turn the fight into an ugly pocket brawl. Chandler cannot handle the fight in my opinion, when it's in a pocket brawl. And that's what Priscila needs to do. Now, who do I got winning this fight? I'm going with Priscila. That's my decision. I think she completely dominates Chandler. Chandler has poor striking defense, and her strike in general is okay. Only way I feel like she really has winning here is the ground, on the ground. But even that, Priscila has some good takedown defense. Give me Priscila by a decision. Next up, we have up here in the flyweight division, we have up is Bruno Silva versus Edgar Sanchez. Looking at their last 5 fights, Sanchez had a draw, no contest over Daniel Lada. Then beat him in the rematch with a triangle choke. Lost to Joshua, which I get it. He was Joshua is currently the champ. But if I'm not mistaken, Joshua took this fight on like a 3 days notice. I could be lying, but I remember he did take this fight on short notice. Then came back and beat CJ Vergara, and that fight with CJ, man, that fight with CJ was insane. That was probably the best I've ever seen Edgar Sanchez in my life. And then, most recently beat Felipe Bunis in a close fight, which, could have gone either way. I believe it was a split decision. Felipe Bunis, I know he got cut, but not a bad win at all. Then you got Silva, who, beat Cody Duran. But here's the problem I have with Silva. Every time I pick this guy to win, he always loses. And every time I pick him to lose, he's always winning. Like, listen, I had picked him to lose to Cody Duran before, but the reason why I picked him to lose this fight, because I thought he was gonna get knocked out by the strike of Cody Duran. And then, I thought he was going to beat Minnow. I thought he was going to lose to Minnow Cop. So, yeah, Minnow Cop. I thought he was going to beat Joshua Van. Yes, guys. I'm not lying to you guys when I say this. I thought Bruno Brazil was going to beat Joshua Van. I think it was going to be too awkward and it's, too fast on the feet for Joshua Van. I thought he was going to lose to Hung Sung Park. And that's a good win, actually, because Hung Sung Park, I know he lost to Tsurutar before that. But, he took that fight on short notice and then, lost Charles Johnson. I thought he was going to win this one, too. And listen, I thought he won this fight against Charles Johnson. But the problem it was that he was a little too stiff in the fight. Kind of wasn't really doing as much. Neither was Charles Johnson. It was a pretty close fight. I enjoyed the fight. But, yeah, he just didn't really look as good. He just didn't really look as good and fast on the feet at all. But then you got Edgar Sanchez with a very, listen. One thing I am concerned, because if you look at that first round that Edgar Sanchez had with Felipe Bunis, I don't know, if you guys watched it live, you guys will know what I'm talking about. Felipe Bunis literally did that slick move, got his back, and, they were on against the cage, they weren't on the ground, and Edgar Sanchez was just trying to, was struggling to get out of there. Bruno Silva is good at doing that too. Obviously, I feel like Felipe Bunis is a little faster. I feel like Bruno Silva is a little more predictable, but if Bruno Silva can't get him there, it could be very tough for Edgar Sanchez. But now, 3 things they need to do to win this fight. Bruno Silva needs to enforce heavy wrestling pressure and top control. He's very good when it comes to top control. And Edgar Sanchez isn't really necessarily one of the best grapplers we out there. Even that grappling was kind of Felipe Bunis was kind of affecting Edgar Sanchez. Like I said, I think skill for skill. I think Silva's the better grappler than Bunis. I just think Bunis is a faster grappler than Silva. Now, at number 2, he needs to neutralize Sanchez's guard submission because Sanchez is going to try his best to guard those submissions no matter what. He's not trying to get submitted. So Silva has to be very quick about trying to submit him if he's planning on submitting him in this fight. Now, at number 1, he needs to feint levels to open up overhands as well, especially that right overhand that he has. That right overhand and those left overhand is very clean. Kind of like the same thing I said for for Duben. Try shoot that jab, come up with an overhand, or like the same game plan. Now for Sanchez, he needs to weaponize his massive height and reach. Sanchez is the taller fighter, and we've kind of seen Silva kind of struggle with taller fighters. Obviously, he couldn't do that against Joshua Van, but Joshua Van is not an easy guy to keep on the inside. He's always in your face, and it's like I said, very hard for you to keep him on the outside. But Bruno Silva is a little more easier to keep on the inside because once you're the tall fighter, you kind of use that jab, got to keep that distance, move around. Even when he fought Charles Johnson was moving around a little bit, keeping him off him. And now at number 2, he needs to intercept takedowns with knees and uppercuts. If Silva's going to land the takedowns, because sometimes Silva could be a very predictable grappler. So, if I was Sanchez, I would land a knee, either land a knee or uppercuts, wherever one works for you. Lastly, at number 1, he needs to attack with high volume standing striking. I think one weakness I've seen from Silva is that when he faces a high volume striker who uses a high volume striker, it's very tough for him to win the fight. We saw that in his fight with Manel Kopp. We saw that in his fight with Joshua Van. I wouldn't necessarily say we saw that in his fight with Charles Johnson, though. But his fight with Joshua Van and Manel Kopp, you see that their high volume striking pace affects them very bad. Now, who do I got winning this fight? I think Edgar Sanchez knocks out Bruno Silva in the second round. Listen, Bruno Silva, he's almost 37 years old, guys. And I think, at this point, he's taken a lot of punches to the head, man. He's got knocked out pretty bad. Like I said, he's got way too many punches to the head. I feel like his advantage is trying to submit Edgar Sanchez in the early rounds, but give me Edgar Sanchez by knockout. Next up, in the bantamweight division, we have up here is Marcus McGhee versus Yannis. Now listen, I actually like this fight a lot. It could go either way. I feel like it's going to be a stand-up fight for a majority of the fight. Yannis is a guy with a very good boxing, and I feel like a little bit of improved grappling. We seen that his last time out over Jamie Siraj, which was literally a month ago. He's taking this fight on short notice after Jacob Willicks pulled out. I think he had like an arm injury or something. But then you got Marcus McGhee, who's a very good striker, with a decent grappling game. And then before that, Yannis lost to Austin Baji, which, Austin Baji, just his prospect, looking good outside of the UFC over Nick Alguro, CJ, beating Demis. Then you look at Marcus McGhee, beating Journey Newton, beating JP Buys. These are all solid victories. Beating Gaston Banaz, which Gaston just shouldn't be in the UFC at this point. Beating Jonathan Martinez. And Jonathan Martinez is a good fighter still. And I thought that was a very good win, very competitive win. And then, I think it could have been a little bit of step up in competition, but fought Peter Yan, who's currently the world champion. Like, imagine this, he fought Peter Yan. And no, this is not for a world title. Don't get it twisted, y'all. But yeah, he fought Peter Yan before Peter Yan got the title shot with Barab. In my opinion, he did better than what Barab actually did. He was very competitive on the feet. Had some more fight IQ. Trying to get out the way when Peter Yan closes that gap. So he looked very good. But a concern here I had with Yannis is that if you look at this fight with Jamie Siraj, he knocked him out in the first round. But if you just look at that fight in general, before knocked him out like 1 minute 36 before he knocked him out. He got hit with a clean right hand and he got stunned. And James Siraj is not that good of a striker at all. And Marcus McGhee has a very good right hand. But listen, even though I know, Marcus McGhee is only almost 37, which I didn't know until as recently, which is very wild. He's still a good fighter. I would say I could see him becoming world champion, but I could see him giving anybody a tough challenge. He gave Peter Yannis a tough task because I thought he was gonna get knocked out cold. So good for him that he did that. But now let's go over the three things these fighters need to do to win. He needs, for Marcus B, at number 3, he needs to push a high volume pace from the start. Because John Yannis, in my opinion, he's the type of guy where, he tries to, make it as dominant as possible with the boxing. But if you start off by, making it very close, it kind of, worries John Yannis if he would actually win the fight. He needs to explode John Yannis' short notice conditioning. Because he's taking this fight on short notice. Even though it's not by much. I think it was like 1.5, like a month and a half short notice. But, obviously, we've seen in the past that, he took a short notice against Austin Baji and, got submitted. But even that was at 145, man. He doesn't fight at 145. He fights at 135. So, yeah. But I can still see this being a competitive fight. Now, at number 1, he needs to utilize feints to establish those high kicks. I feel like one weakness we've seen from, John Yannis that that sometimes he can't handle a head kick. But he could. But when they feint it, it kind of he kind of struggles a little bit because he kind of gets worried that he's going to get knocked out. Now for John Yannis, John Yannis has to utilize his reach advantage to counter strike because he is slightly the taller fighter by 1.5 inch. And he's very good when it comes to fighting on the outside. He's good on the inside too, coming in. But like when you see him on the outside with his boxing, it's just very sharp, very clean, and it looks very impressive. At number 2, John Yannis needs to rely heavily on technical patience. If he's not patient enough in this fight, that could favor Marcus McGhee a lot. And last, he needs to force the fight to the mat in the late rounds. Like we've seen in Marcus McGhee's fight against Jonathan Martinez, when Jonathan Martinez started landing takedowns towards the end, Marcus McGhee couldn't really defend it as good. Not because he's tired, just because he's kind of focus more on the strike. And even we saw that in this fight with Peter Yan. That's what John Yannis needs to do in this fight. But now, who do I got to win in this fight? I'm going ahead. I'm picking Marcus McGhee to win a split decision. I think it's going to be a back-to-back fun fight between two very good strikers. But I think Marcus McGhee, is probably the smarter fighter, and I think a little bit of the better striker. I see him winning, but not by much. Give me Marcus McGhee to win by a split decision. Next up, it is in the light heavyweight division, Baraniewski versus Junior Tafa. Now, listen, I'm going to just cut to the chase. I think I'm going ahead. I'm picking Baraniewski to win this fight by knockout first round. But we are going to go over 3 things that I'm going to just do Junior Tafa for this one. 3 things that Junior Tafa needs to do to win this fight. Junior Tafa needs to enforce an early power blitz in the beginning. Even though that may seem, you guys are wondering, Javian, that sounds very stupid. Trust me, we've seen Baranoshki fight Ibo Aslan in the beginning. Ibo Aslan was just hitting him with some early blitz that he almost knocked him out in that first round. That's what Junior Tafa needs to do in that fight now at number 2. He needs to utilize defensive pivots to get out of those clinch exchanges because Ivo Baranoshki is going to try and get him in the clinch or even get him close. So he's got to pivot a lot in this fight, moving around. But one thing I am concerned, if you look at this fight with Kevin Christian, he was getting beat that entire first round before Kevin Christian got knocked out. Those leg kicks seem to be very effective on Junior Tafa. And if Ivo Baranoshki can use the leg kicks very well, and he has some good leg kicks, this fight could be over very soon. Now, lastly, at number 1, he needs to use level exchange uppercuts. He's a good counter puncher. But when you see Baraniewski, having his guard pretty low, try and try and pivot and come up with a very clean uppercut that can win the fight. But I think Baraniewski wins this fight by knockout in the first round. Junior Tafa is very chinnable. I just think he loses this fight in general. Even though his last 3 losses were all by submission, Baraniewski's a good wrestler too. Give me Baraniewski by knockout. Now, now in the flyweight division, we got up here is Matt Schnell versus Alessandro Costa. Listen, now I feel like this is a better fight than than some of you guys actually think. Listen, you got Matt Schnell, who's been in the UFC for quite some time now. Matt Schnell has been in the UFC, since 2016. But then you got this prospect like Costa, who's a very good striker and with very good jiu-jitsu. But let's look at their last 5 fights. Looking at his last 5 fights, beat Jimmy Vick, lost to Steve Ursag, beat Kevin Boros, lost to Eldon Corano, which was a good win. And then, lost to beat Stuart Nicole in a very fun fight before he knocked him out. Listen, these guys were supposed to fight back last year in September, but I think Costa had rescheduled. It was supposed to be Edgar Sanchez, but Edgar Sanchez pulled out, so they had Corana instead, which was a solid loss. Listen, I can see this being a good fight, but now let's go over 3 things each fighter needs to do to win this fight. Matt Schnell needs to use his height and reach advantage. Number 2, he needs to not get pocket brawl with Costa. That's what Costa wants Matt Schnell to do in this fight. Matt Schnell needs to be very smart about what he does. And he needs to have offensive wrestling scrambles, because Costa's probably going to try and take him down. Now for Costa, he needs to break down Matt Schnell by breaking down his submission defense. Because Matt Schnell has had some good submission defense. Obviously, been submitted by only the probably good submission artists, but he needs to use So Costa needs to use a lot of submission defense, because Matt Schnell is going to probably try and submit him. But listen, Matt Schnell did look good against Jimmy Vick, though. I will give him that. But Jimmy Vick and Costa are 2 different fighters, bro. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to pick Costa to win this one by knockout. And I think he's going to knock out, Matt Schnell in the second round. I think Matt Schnell will survive, the first few rounds of the fight. But I think the first round he's going to survive. In the second round, he's going to get caught up and get knocked out. But give me Alessandro Costa by knockout. Next up, we got up here is Bryce Mitchell versus Santiago Luna. Now, this is a fight I'm looking forward into. I know Bryce Mitchell was supposed to like Victor Henry, which, solid fight. But I actually rather see Bryce Mitchell fight Santiago Luna than see him fight Victor Henry. But now, let's go over 3 things each fighter needs to do to win this fight. But first, let's go over the last 5 fights. Let's look at Luna's last 5 fights. Outside of UFC, beat Curvas, beat, Baydiv, beat Rana Bats, then got into UFC, beat Quan Lee, which is a good win. Then, most recently beat Angel Pacheco. Listen, Santiago Luna is possibly one of the best Mexican prospects we have today. And his striking is very good. He's got good grappling. Then you got, Bryce Mitchell, who, beat Dan Ige, which, I actually was surprised he beat Dan Ige. Because Dan Ige is the better striker, and just very surprising. Then, he got knocked out by Josh Emmett, and we all knew that was happening. Beat Tron Gracie, a.k.a. Horace Gracie's son-in-law, I think. Which, Tron Gracie's really not that good of a fighter. Then, lost to Gene Silva. And then right here, beat Habib Nurmagomedov, bro. He beat Habib, bro. Nah, I'm kidding, bro. Saad Nurmagomedov, bro. He beat Saad, bro. And listen, Saad's a good fighter, but I didn't expect Bryce Mitchell to do that to Saad at all. That was very surprising. I was very shocked. He out-wrestled the man. He laid on top of the man, making him look like a fool. Listen, I would get why Bryce Mitchell's slightly the favorite, but this could go either way, guys. Because listen, you got Santiago, who's one of the best prospects, undefeated. And if Bryce Mitchell takes his own way, he deserves somebody in that top 15. No, and that's without a doubt. But now, let's go over the 3 things each fighter needs to do to win this fight. Bryce Mitchell, number 3, he needs to avoid overextending in the distant kickboxing. He's a solid kickboxer, but listen, that first round that he had with Gene Silva, he outstriked him a little bit in that first round. And to my surprise, he did that because Bryce Mitchell is a solid striker, not a best striker, but for him to outstrike Gene Silva in the first round like that, that was very impressive in my opinion. He needs to intent chaotic grappling and scrambles in this fight. Luna is a very chaotic grappler and he likes to scramble, so he needs to worry about that in his fight. Now, lastly, number one, he needs to weaponize his veteran cardio for 3 rounds because he has good cardio, man. Believe it or not, he doesn't really get tired like that. When have we ever really seen Bryce Mitchell really get tired like that during fights? So he needs to test that on Luna. Now for Luna. Luna needs to establish that jab to control the 4-inch reach advantage because if you look right here, he is, the taller fighter by 4 inches. So he needs to use that jab to control the 4-inch reach advantage so Bryce Mitchell won't try and land no takedown. Now at number two, he needs to use Greco-Roman underhooks to deny takedowns. If he could use those underhooks, those underhooks, basically kind of like a slash hook slash uppercut. They call it like a Greco-Roman underhook. He needs to use that to stop the stuff to kind of stuff the takedown to Bryce Mitchell because he doesn't really have the best takedown defense, but he's so good at getting back up. That's just the problem here I have for Bryce Mitchell. He needs to explode Mitchell's 58% striking defense early because Mitchell has some good striking defense. Like it's a 58% chance. It's in that 58% chance. No, that 58% striking defense of Bryce Mitchell is very good. He makes it. He uses the best striking defense he has to. He uses his striking defense to the best of his ability to defend those strikes. But now, who do I got winning this fight? I got Santiago Luna winning this fight by a decision. It's going to be a fun fight on the feet, and on the ground. It should be pretty fun. I know some of you guys are saying he shouldn't fight nobody else besides Alessandro Poirier. I like this fight better than him fighting Alexander Poirier. But yeah, I got Luna winning this one by a competitive decision. Next up here, we got up is Farazia versus Tom Nolan. Now, I honestly like this fight a lot. I think it's a close fight. You got Tom Nolan, who, lost to Nick Motto, then went into Victor Martinez, beat Alex Reyes, beat Barkasov, most recently beat Charlie Campbell, and, showed his submission skills. Then you got Farazim, who beat Jai Herbert, beat Quinano Pueyos, beat Matt Fridola, beat Mike Davis, beat Nazim. Look at all these last 5 fights are all good wins. But even though his fight with Nazim, I thought the stoppage was a little too early, and the ref did stop it after the bell. Jason Herzog did. I had watched it live, so you guys can say other. So if you guys didn't watch it live, you guys can't say otherwise because I watched it live. But yeah, Farazia is a good striker overall, and you got Tom Nolan, who's a good striker. Like I said, showed his submission defense. But now let's go over 3 things each fighter needs to do to win this fight. He needs to utilize his 2-inch reach advantage in this fight. As you guys can tell right here, 2-inch reach. He needs to utilize that in this fight. At number 2, he needs to explode Nolan's loose striking defense. Nolan's a heavy hitter, but he sometimes has this loose striking defense where it could, not it could be very concerning coming into this fight with Farazian. At number 1, Farazian needs to mix in level exchanges to win this fight, to slow the pace. Tom Nolan has some heavy hands, so if he can slow the striking down, that could definitely work for him. Now for Tom Nolan. Nolan needs to enforce high aggressive pressure. He needs, because we kind of seen Farazian kind of struggle with the exchanges. We've kind of seen that before in his in a few of his fights, even his fight with Terrence McKinney, his fight with Jamie Malarski, even a little bit in that fight with Nazim, a little bit in that fight with Mike Davis. So we've seen that happen to Farazim quite some time. So that's what Tom Nolan needs to do at number 2. He needs to chop down Ziem's lead leg early in this fight. Ziem has a very good. His lead leg is probably the best thing that helps him in this fight. And if Nolan can chop that down with like some kicks, some kicks to slow it, some leg kicks, slow it down, that could definitely work for him, and definitely have a high chance of Tom Nolan winning that fight. And number one, he needs to isolate the neck during scrambles. Like when Farzia is landing those takedowns, try and get that neck with a guillotine choke. Now, who do I got winning this fight? I'm going with Farzia. I'm gonna go knockout. I'm gonna say a third round knockout for this fight. Farzia's a good. Tom Nolan's a good fighter, one of my favorite Australian prospects. But I think Farzia's been on such an impressive run. I don't know if I really see Tom Nolan winning this fight. So give me Farzia to win this one by knockout. Next up, we have the co-main event: Brandon Allen versus Edmen Shahbazyan. Now, listen, I think it's, I think they're treating Brandon Allen like crap. Not giving him they're giving him a fighter outside of the rankings here. But this could be a fun fight. You got Edmen Shahbazyan, who beat AJ Dobson, lost to Gerald Mercherot, which I'm very surprised on how the heck he lost to this guy, knowing that was the last win Gerald ever won. He's on like 5-fight losing streak right now. Then beat Dylan Buka, beat Andre Parashri, who's a fluke as well, beat Andre Muniz, who's cut from the UFC. So he's had very solid wins. Not the best wins you would possibly say. Then you got Brandon Allen, who, beat Chris Curtis in a very good, fun fight. Lost to Narcia Evolve, won that first round, they got dominated the rest. Lost to Anthony Hernandez, beat Marvin Vittori, and had the biggest win. It looks super fantastic against Ryder the Ritter. And he doesn't get a fight with DDP. That makes no sense. But now, let's go over 3 things each fighter needs to do to win this fight. First, Allen needs to drag this fight to the mat very early. We've seen Edmen Shahbazyan has decent wrestling, but against Gerald Merchant, and even his loss to Anthony Hernandez, because I'm not mistaken, he fought Anthony Hernandez. He's not that good of a wrestler. Brandon Allen's a very good wrestler. Listen, I feel like Brandon Allen's improving. If I'm not mistaken, this guy was in training camp with Armin Sarukian, in camp with Hamza Chimaev, in camp with Khalil Roundtree. It also was in camp with Belal Muhammad. Those are all good fighters. Khalil Roundtree Jr., former title challenger. You got Hamza Chimaev, former UFC champ. You got Armin Sarukian, #1 contender. Belal Muhammad, former UFC champ. So he's with the best fighters in the UFC, the best fighters in their weight classes, or former title challengers, former champs, training with them to help him win the fight. So he should be improving everywhere in this fight. But now, at number 2, he needs to deploy defense discipline in the pocket. Like I said, looked very good in the pocket when he fought Ryder the Ritter. And his striking, in my opinion, has improved in a lot. Now, at number 1, he needs to drown Edmen Shahbazyan in deep water. And that's basically what everybody has done who's ever beat him. They just had drowned him in deep water so bad that he couldn't win the fight at all. Now, for Edmen Shahbazyan, he needs to unleash the sniping right hand early. We've seen Brent Allen get hurt by a right hand. Sean Strickland years ago. I get it was years ago though. So like, he hasn't really got clipped by right hands as recently. Kind of did by Marvin Vittori, but still won the fight. Even did by Chris Curtis, but still handling it. His chin, in my opinion, has definitely improved after that Sean Strickland loss. Now, for number 2, Edmen Shahbazyan needs to pivot and use that underhook when Brandon Allen is landing those takedowns. Because I feel like once this hits the mat, I think Edmen Shahbazyan will have a very tough time of getting back up. And he could get gassed out in nearly the first 2 rounds. Now, number 1, he needs to target the body to make it forward pressure. So, if he wants any chance of having those takedowns stop and going forward pressure at him, he needs to land a lot of body shots. We've seen Brandon Allen get affected by body shots before. We've all have, even with some of those knees that Brian Ritter was throwing at him. But if he can't land the correct body shots, Brandon Allen should dominate. And that's who I'm going for. I think Brandon Allen completely dominates Edmen Shahbazyan, of total of like a 29-28 all judges score decision. If Edmen Shahbazyan can get him out with a flying knee or something, I can only see that happening. But give me Brandon Allen by decision. Next up, we got up here our main event of the evening: Belal Muhammad versus Gabriel Bonfim. Now listen, I think it's a little bit of too much step in competition for Bonfim. You got Bonfim, who beat Nicholas Delby, beat Angie Lusa, beat Chaos Williams. These all solid wins. Beat Stephen Thompson in a fight where I thought he lost. And most recently beat Brandy Brown in a fight where I thought it was a very early stoppage. And then you got Belal Muhammad on the other hand, who's beat Sean Brady, which, listen, He's not beating Sean Brady. Beat Gilbert Burns. You know, Gilbert Burns retired. I don't even. Gilbert Burns is honestly retired, so we can't say that. Losing to Leon Edwards. Listen, I don't even know if Bonfim can beat Leon Edwards. Where I would favor him to win, but that's a fight where I don't think he could possibly win. Lost to Jack Della Mandolina. Listen, he's not beat. Got Bonfim's not beating Jack Della Mandolina either. Most recently lost to Ian Machado Gary in a competitive fight where he's not he is not losing to Bonfim at all. Bonfim's a good fighter. I'm not even gonna say three things he's gonna win. I'm gonna just get this fight in detail. Bonfim is a decent striker, decent Muay Thai fighter, but his grappling has never been tested. And Belal Muhammad has such great grappling, and Belal Muhammad, believe it or not, has a good chin. So he went 5 hard rounds with Jack Della Mandolina, who that was prime Jack Della Mandolina, and he wasn't really landing takedowns like that. It was like standing up back to back war. It was such a good fight, but yeah, and then also survived punches from Hands of Steel, Jeff Neal, prime Jeff Neal, Vicente Luque, prime Vicente Luque. Like he's fought in the best of the best for years. Like if you look at this man's resume, Ian Gary, Jack Della Mandolina, Leon Edwards, Gilbert Burns, Sean Brady, Vicente Luque, Stephen Thompson, Damian Maya, Leon Edwards again, Lima. All of these, he's got some very good wins here, guys. Jeff Neal, look over here, Tim Means. This was when Tim Means was very good. Randy Brown, Vicente Luque again. All of these wins are all solid, man. He had a good resume. And I don't think I think I'm going to favor Belal Muhammad in this fight. Bonfim's not going to get ragdolled at least 50-43. Yeah. I think he's gonna get dominated like that. I don't really see Bonfim really winning this fight here, guys. But Bonfim only has a way of knocking him out. I don't even think he's knocking out Belal Muhammad. But that will be the end of the video, guys. Make sure you guys hit that like, subscribe button, turn on notifications when you guys want to see when I upload. Comment down below who you guys got winning this fight. And I'll see y'all in the next one. I'm out. Peace.